This is Module 2, Lesson 5 of working with Monogame. Looking to create a space shooter game. Last lesson where we left off, we created an enemy class, created a little bit of AI, just make the thing go down, and we also added some collisions into there. To move forward and progress forward, I want to look at creating lists. So we're going to use lists to have a list of different enemies. So we're going to have many enemies appearing at the same time from the same line of script. And we're going to use a level manager to host all of this. Okay? So, I'm going to treat the level class exactly the same as I treat all the other classes. I'm just adding a blank class into my space shooter project now. I'm going to call this level manager. Then that loads up. What does a level have? Well, what does a level have? I know it's going to have an amount of enemies. It's going to have how many players, I guess. I tell you what, I'm going to leave this empty now. I'm going to put the constructor and stuff in. Public level manager. But I'm not going to do anything in it. I'm probably just going to come back to that later. My game will have many different levels, and I want to call in each level in the game class. Last time I was just deleting the things that I'd already had in before, so I'm basically just starting off with a fairly blank a fairly blank script. I'm even going to get rid of these two as well. Just going to start with something totally blank back into the game class by deleting what we've done over the past few sessions, and I'm going to add in level manager level 01. Then in the load content, let's initialize that by going level 01 equals new level manager open close bracket semicolon. And I've just added that in there so that when errors start appearing in my error list, I'll know where to go. I'm going to leave that open on there as well. So, what does the level manager have? It has a player. It definitely has a player. We're going to treat this as one player for now. Yeah, we'll treat this as one player for now. I think it'll be easier to manage. What is that player? What's it going to have? Player equals new player, open brackets, and it needs a sprite. I'll put new sprite, left bracket. Okay, things are starting to get complicated, so I'm constructing the level manager to say that it's going to have a player. I'm going to need to start putting things in here as well. So I need a file name, so that was player sprite, and start position new vector 2. Oh, notice I didn't actually have the framework in. Scroll back up, let's put that in now, using Microsoft.xna.framework, using Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics. That should work. New vector 2. Let's put him somewhere in the center. Let's go 400 by 300. That'd be nice. After the sprite, also need to put in a float for speed, so how fast it's going to be. 5. Totally arbitrary number. We can change that later. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that works so far. Does that work? So we're going to need to have some methods for drawing and updating the levels and stuff. So let's put that in next. So public void load content load level content, and we'll have one for public void update level, and last one public void, try again, public void draw level. Okay, that's good to go. And what's going to happen? We're going to do player dot sprite dot load sprite content. I need content to go into there. Content manager content. Remember that error that we had before? We need to just click that little light bulb and add that content framework in there as well. And then in there goes content, semicolon at the end. Next, update level. So what's going on here? That's player dot hang on. What does the player do? If I do, well that's a bit redundant. Can I do that? Player dot load player content. That makes more sense. Yeah, that makes more sense. That's why we should be using proper encapsulation, because as you notice in there, that was not what I was supposed to do. This is asking for a game 1, so game 1 there. Game 1. And draw level. We're just going to do player dot draw player, and we need sprite batch in there, so that's sprite batch sb, and in here we'll put sb. Okay. Right. Let's see what errors appears now. Obviously nothing, because I haven't called those methods in. Okay, try that again. So I've got a new instance of the level manager, and what I didn't do was all of the load content I need to do. So level 1 dot load level content. In update, I need to do level 1 dot update level, this, and in draw I need to do level 1 dot draw level, sprite patch. Now we should have just the player working. Excellent. Right, cool. So the player works, that's no bother. So now my level manager is handling all of that, and it's drawing in. It's basically, I'm using this to just organize all of what's happening in each individual level. So if I had like lots of different levels, which we'll look at enumeration a lot later, we should be able to do that and be able to have different levels and switch between different levels as the game goes on. Next, we're going to add enemies. Now, enemies is done slightly differently. This time with enemies, we are going to use a list. Excuse me. Which looks like this. List. Can't use list. Why can't we use list? Using system.collections.generic, which I deleted earlier, so it's been added in now. So a list of enemy objects called enemies. Enemies is a good name for it. Equals new list of enemy. I can also dictate how many enemies is going to be in there. Right. So now that I've got my list in my constructor, I can add to that list of enemies, and I can design what that enemy will be. So how that looks, okay, so basically all I'm doing is in my load content, I could do it in load content, or should I try it in the constructor? Let's see what happens if I do it in the constructor. Enemies dot add, open left bracket, new enemy, open left bracket, new sprite, that's enemy sprite, and that's new vector 2. So this is his start position. Let's put him minus 100. I want to put him above the screen. No, let's just put him on the screen. Let's make things easy for us. 300 by 10. So 10. 20 will do then. Fine, 20. So that's that one. That's that. Next we need is speed. He will be 1. Make him nice and slow so we can watch him. And then that should end that new enemy. Okay, so that's added 1 enemy. If I hit start, it's not going to do anything still because I still didn't draw in that enemy. Right, so lists, we need to do things slightly differently. I'm going to show you why we would use lists rather than just adding each individual enemy separately and giving different values. Do it this way. It's all to do with this. So we use for each what? For each enemy object, and we need to give it a name. So we're just going to call it E, eighth enemy. So for each enemy E in the list that we create called enemies, do the following. E dot load enemy content and pass in content for each of those. Semicolon, and that will load in the content for each individual enemy. So it's saying that it's counting all of the enemies in there. I want to do the same for draw, but I want to do it slightly differently in update, just so I can show you different ways of doing it. For each enemy E in enemies, do E dot draw enemy. Done. They aren't going to move, but I would like to see if they draw in now. No, they do not. Why? This shouldn't be doing anything else differently. What's the enemy draw thing do? For player. It's not drawing in. Not drawing in at all. Why? I'm going to use breakpoints to track this. I'll put a little red dot there that highlights this code, and when I've run the program will crash when it reaches that line of code, if it reaches that line of code. So it is counting that there is one enemy. There is something called E, which has a sprite in there. It has no rectangle. Ah, right, that's why. The way I've created the enemy class is because it requires this to be happening to work out the rectangle. So we'll have to do update before we can run the program. And we're going to do it like this instead. We're going to use a for loop, and we're going to create an integer called I and just set that to 0 to start off with. This time it will be used to iterate sequentially. So let's just follow along. It'll check to see if I is less than or equal to, is less than or equal to, and I'm going to use enemies dot count, then do I plus plus, which adds 1, then use enemies. These square brackets means an array. I can use that and grab that from a list, and we're going to assign this a number. So first thing is set that as 0. So the enemy labeled 0, do dot update enemy, open that bracket and semicolon. Run this. I do think it's going to crash, and if it does, I'll be able to tell you why. The index is out of range, so numbers in programming or arrays in programming start at 0. So the first number in a list is 0. So if I have, although I've only got 1, I'm going to add a second one into here, just to demonstrate it. So I've added a second one, and I'm going to give them slightly different values and different speeds, so that'll do. This one is labelled 0 and this one is labelled 1. Okay, so what's happening here is the enemy that is labelled 0 will be doing update enemy, then it'll add 1, then it'll check to see if I is less than or equal to the amount of enemies. Again, really we should be doing enemies.count -1. Yes, we'll try that. We'll try enemies.count -1, -1. Run that, because the enemies.count starts at 1, the array starts at 0, so we minus and 1 to make that match up. And there we go. We've got 2 enemies wandering about, minding their own business. There we go. Oh, that is excellent. That is excellent. That's exactly what we need. So now we're starting to build up the construct of what this game is going to be, almost like the main body of the game, and then we can start adding physics and things to the enemies and make things more dynamic. I'm also, in this level manager, going to create a method that's going to be used to see if an enemy collides with something, or with if anybody collides with something. So I'm going to add a new method, public bool check collisions. So this method must return true or false. So I'm just going to add that in now. Return false for now. We've done return methods before where it was an integer in an earlier one, but now we are using a boolean. I'm going to return false or true depending on what happens. Okay. So we're going to need in there to pass in 2 different rectangles. Rectangle for the player and rectangle rectangle for called other, and we'll do if player dot intersects other dot rectangle. Can I do that, or is it just other? If it intersects that, then return true, else return false. This will just be a nice and simple way to put in two rectangles to check if it collides with anything. But why we've used this iteration is we can use this to check if the player collides with any of these enemies in the list. So let's try if check collisions player dot sprite dot rectangle in one of them, and the other one will be enemies I dot sprite dot rectangle. Do the following. Remove enemies dot remove at I, and hopefully it should remove the one that is collided with. Hopefully. Pop. Pop. Dead. Right, so now we've got collisions going on, and we have lots and lots of so that we've got collisions going on there. Some simple ones which I'm going to delete later on, because really we want the player to die when that happens. Would also want the instead we're going to add bullets later on. We'll look at that later. Next, what I want to do next, let's add a couple more enemies in. Give them I'll give them all the same speed, but I'm going to make them just a little bit further away. And that will be 400. Oh, no, that's a very bad idea. It's the other way around. These should be minuses. Get there in the end. There. Minus 20 is probably not high enough. Hey, look at them go. Let's just see what happens. How does that look? Plonk, 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 plonk. Right, cool. So we've created lists we've added to the level, and I think that will be enough to stop there. Yeah, that will be enough to stop there. What we'll do next is making the enemies loop. That would be different. Spawning enemies. Oh, random numbers. So what we're going to have is enemies spawn at random times in random positions.